thank you all for coming. I hope you're all enjoying the ROFLCon you've gotten so far. And, it's mattering. Good, excellent. And hope you'll enjoy the ROFLCon to come. How many people, for them, this is their first ROFLCon? Wow, that's a lot of them. You've been reading about it online, and you're like, is it everything I dreamed it would be? And it's like, it kind of is. I got to pose with Scumbag Steve. This was awesome. That is awesome. And then that's when you find out that these people that you laugh at as little cardboard cutouts are actually full, real human beings that have lives and are cool. I'm sorry about that. But everything else should be pretty good. So my next question, which I always like to ask, is how many people are here based on I'm giving the talk? All right. And how many people are here because the name was intriguing? All right. And then I am so scared the next panel is going to be so packed, so I'm preloading. There you go. That's good. One good. Excellent. Name of this talk is called The Mysterious Mr. Hokum. It's taken me about 10 years to put this together. I started actually learning about this when I was in my teens, and then I have, for a number of years, tried to find a proper place to put it. And when ROFLCon let me come in at a very late time, I was very pleased to be able to bring it to you. Okay. So nobody actually knows the last things that went through Robert Hokum's mind when he died. He died of a heart attack in his expensive, beautiful home outside of Indianapolis. He was at that point very well off. He was a beloved member of his community. He was a car collector. He was an ISP owner who had recently sold out, and he had his whole life ahead of him. But instead what he found was he was dying in his bedroom at the age of 41. And again, I have to say that at the beginning, he's dead, and I don't have any idea what he thought. I cannot tell you that much. So his name was Robert Hokum, H-O-Q-U-I-M. If you look up the definition of Hokum, H-O-K-U-M, you end up with this definition. That of a charlatan, of pulling something over, of convincing somebody something is real that isn't. Now, when Bob Hokum died, they wanted to contact the nearest members of his family to tell him that he was gone. And what they found was that his identification was kind of strange. His social security number wasn't real. His town listed in the records as where he was born was not real. And so they weren't sure what to do about that. And so the authorities, trying to track the story of this man down, got access to his shipping container. And when they opened it, that's when everything fell apart. So unlike a lot of the talks that are being given here, this one's not one, if you've seen other talks I've given, they're essentially often stand-up routines. That is to say, I'm providing you with a bunch of hilarity interspersed with a small amount of education. This is very much the other way around. This is an actual story that happened, and I think that there's a greater thing to be learned from it, right? So I just wanted to preload you with that knowledge, that if you're like, when does he get to the funny part? There's not a funny part. I mean, there's interesting, there's amusing, there's learned, there's finding out stuff has happened, but there's not a funny part. The story, this is the beginning part of the story. A bizarre identity crisis is unfolding in central Indiana. The secret part of a successful businessman is coming to light just a couple weeks after his death. He first came to Indiana back in 1987 and started iQuest Internet. 13 years later, a much darker side has been revealed. This is Robert Hokum. This photo is not a contemporary one at the time of his death. For reasons that will become obvious, he tended to avoid being photographed. So there aren't many photos of him at that time. I was unable to track them down after a couple years of looking around. He just was very good at not getting in front of the camera. Instead, we have a mugshot. In this mugshot, you'll notice that he's wearing a cast. The reason he's wearing a cast is because his finger has been shot off. The reason his finger has been shot off is because he was wrestling with a cop in a car while being arrested and had his finger shot off in the struggle. And I guess they bandaged him up and they put him in front of the camera anyway. These are two other photos of him. This was not the first time he was arrested. What you see here is one in Colorado, one in Dallas County, two separate crimes. It's believed that he's wearing a hairpiece in this side, but you know, I'm sad to say in some ways that the only photos I have of Robert Hokum are him at his worst, when his scam is caught, when he's dragged into the police station, shamed, wrecked, when he's no longer what I'm sure was the smiling, friendly man who came to people and asked them to help him or wanted to involve themselves in things he was doing. Certainly not the technical genius I've known that he's come to be. Instead, what I have here is a man, in one case missing a finger, who is under arrest. This is probably the nicest photo I actually have of him from the Colorado thing. Again, hairpiece, what are you gonna do? So if you can imagine this kind of a face speaking to you, this is 1986, roughly, and he is in Colorado, has run some scams, and is about to disappear into the night, actually into Dallas, where, again, he pulled more down. I think it's important that people understand the difference between the man and the idea. This is a story about both a man and an idea. It's too easy for us right now to look at someone's story and say, well, that was interesting, and then derive nothing from it except for that it happened. But I think that there's greater ideas in some people's lives, certainly in Robert Hokum's life. The fact that what friendliness is, what the tech industry means. This is an internet conference. I want to talk a little bit about that. And the idea of Robert Hokum survived for me 12 years after his death at 2000. Robert Hokum, of course, was not his real name. He used many different aliases. I've seen estimates of between 12 and 21 different aliases at various times. So he would have names like John Richard, John Alishi, John Alushi, John Aleshi. His real name is the one in green, John Alishi, John Paul Alishi. But like I said, he would use all variations of it at his need. He would also, of course, make his history up. It's always very interesting to look at a scam artist's history. How do they define themselves? Do they define themselves based on you? Do they look at you and they say, this is a military person, I will have a military background for their benefit? Or do they feel that they missed out, that they were cheated out of a military background? So he would refer to being someone who had been in Vietnam, which is actually chronologically impossible. Or he would refer to his work going to places like Caltech. He claimed a lot of different high-end technical schools. And certainly if you met him, it's obvious that he was in some ways a technical genius, a ham radio operator, a comfortable person with technology, enabling him to talk to people. Let's rope things back a little bit. How many people know this cover? It's a relatively iconic cover. This is the cover that ideally starts the home computer industry. This is the Popular Electronics 1975 January cover of the Altair 8088, which was the first home computer, the first personal computer. It's not, there's actually a computer before it called the Mark 8, so that the anal people can know that. It's the Mark 8 is the first. But the Mark 8 was an extremely limited machine. It didn't have a good case to it. It was an extremely geek-oriented, yet not obviously useful machine, a very hard sell, and it was rather expensive. It was in the multiple hundreds of dollars. The Altair, however, claimed that it was about $400 or $498, which was unbelievable. This is like offering you a $2,000 camera for $399. It just blows you away that it would be that way. It's also, to me, endemically interesting, the fact that this cover is a fraud. So before I mention that, I do want to make clear this is not a story that ends with John Alishi. It's a separate story. So please be aware of that. I'm not, he might have seen this when he was a boy, but he was not involved in this. So, very hard to see on this particular screen, but you can see on the left, this is a typical ad for a computer at that time. This is 1975, like I said. The Southwest Technical Products Corporation is selling you what is essentially a machine that lets you type something and see what you typed on a screen. That is essentially the function of that machinery on the left. Press a key, there's what you pressed. Repeat. Don't store, don't calculate, just revel in it. For this privilege, you are spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars. That is the contemporary location. To the right here, we see an exclusive, the Altair 8800, the most powerful mini computer project ever presented. And it can be built for under $400. When I say $498, it's for the pre-assembled. You didn't want the kit. The kit came in pieces that were terrifying. But, all right, so just telling you, if you're in 1975, invest heavily in several companies and buy the finished version. Now, here's the thing. The central CPU of this, the Intel CPU that was built in this thing, was basically available for $400. Now, that really should set off some sort of alarm, right? The fact that the CPU costs as much as what they're offering the machine for. The reason they were able to do that is because they were planning to order cosmetically defective parts. That meant it functioned well, but it looked awful. And because of places not wanting to put out substandard looking items, they were willing to dump it off in bulk for $75 with no logo on it. So that was the central part of this deal. Also, he only wanted 200 to get the company going. And this is why I use the word fraud, which is there is no such computer yet. There's a prototype. It does not exist yet. Instead, it is a collusion between the editors in Popular Electronics and this computer maker to sell people a computer that should, by all means, exist. It will exist. Just give us a little time and send the money in now so we can invest it. This strikes across a continuum of morality, which I'm going to bring up, right? I mean, it's a matter of, is that right? Is that wrong? Is that a problem? If you want the full story, it's down here, pc-history.org/altair.htm, written by a wonderful man named Stan Veet, who's no longer with us, who ran the first computer store by any standard. Ran the first one. Awesome guy. However, luck shone on them. Instead of 200 orders, they got 2,000 orders. It took them months and months and months and months to get back to people, especially if they ordered the non-kit version, but it did show up. They sold 5,000 in their first year, and in doing so, booted off the computer industry. So the computer industry was based off an extremely interesting gamble, and that's language I just want to bring out here, gamble versus fraud. I've got all the pieces. I promise you that this thing that I'm claiming exists, that the model on the left is actually empty. There's nothing in it. They built a prototype. They sent it by express, rail express. It was lost in the shipping because there was a strike. And then they had to basically mock up and send them an empty box and sell it on the front cover to 475,000 readers. Is this good? Is this bad? Along with it came this little project, Altair 4K Basic. That's actually how it came, by the way. This isn't somebody's dupe. That's how it showed up in the mail. This is a 1976 one, written by two guys, Bill Gates and Paul Allen, who turned around and decided they wanted to split off from that company, and they had a slight arbitration, and the newly formed Microsoft Corporation, which was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, to be near the Altair, started its journey into obscurity. The I actually was rather touched that even though they did have this arbitration and everything, that when Bob Roberts, who ran the Altair company, was dying in 2010, the week before he died, Bill Gates flew over in his private jet to spend time with him. So feelings can be, you can get over and you can get over it is what I'm saying there.